Hey guys, it's Matt. This is the only image that I'll show. It's just a placeholder image. So if you're at work, you don't need to see this. If you're like the Guy Fawkes or Guy Fox channel and you're in a diversity or orientation at work or a pronoun orientation to see what legally can and cannot be used at work, and you're just like listening and not paying attention to the pronouns, you don't need to see this. It's just a picture of the eclipse, the great American eclipse. There have been others, and the one coming, I believe, in 2024 will make a big X over the United States. And people want to go stand in the X where both eclipses came over that exact point, and they'll be taken up into alien craft, I hear. This one's getting closer to me in Pennsylvania. So the exercise here is returning. You can do this every time. Returning to the absolute basics, the absolute foundations of understanding in our pursuit of truth. And you'll see when you break it down at its base level, 30, 40, 50% of our community that likes to run with certain themes and ideas, it all breaks down. And I guess recently, I keep going in cycles. I keep saying, I'm not going to fight with these people anymore. Then I fight with them. I'm not going to fight with the people that say the secret societies run everything and men and women make the phone calls. And these are friends of, there's good people like Charlie. Good people. But guys, my goal is to, bring a certain degree of clarity in terms of understanding our predicament here. So then we can leave the breadcrumb chase behind and work on ourselves. Okay, you've heard that before. But it is interesting and fascinating to fight with the people that think the secret societies are running around doing everything. And I hope they stick with this channel. I think they so desperately want to believe that men and women are running around plotting and planning and doing the dastardly deeds. They'll get so upset with me, they'll leave me behind. So maybe the subscriber count will actually go down. We'll see. But this is, when you return to the basics, I don't understand the positions these people would take. And please don't take it the wrong way. They are good people. They don't like George Soros any more than I do, or any less or more than I do. We're all in the same Guy Fawkes hole together. So the eclipse. All right. Let me just start with if I was questioning these individuals that think the secret societies are running around doing everything and plotting and planning and just men and women like George Bush, I would say to them, do you believe that the eclipse is a rock moving in front, that was an Obama, moving in front of a burning thing? Do you believe the eclipse, put their arm out on a table with electrodes and lie detector test, do you believe the eclipse is what, say, the voice box man in the wheelchair post-deceased, what he would tell you about it? Do you believe it? That it's a rock moving in front of a burning thing? Now, most people in our community, no matter what part of truth they're coming from, would say no. No, it's not. They don't believe, they question even what the moon is. They don't believe it's a rock in space, a big, perfectly round, sphere-shaped cat litter box moving perfectly in front of a burning thing, and they just happen to be the same size, exactly the same size, like 2 milled quarters. Most people in our community just don't buy it, no matter what their theory is, because it is about a 1 in a trillion coincidence that this could possibly happen. People trying to type right now saying, Matt, don't you know? Don't you know that 1 is 400 times larger, and 1 is 400 times farther, so when they move on top of each other, from your perspective, they're the same? No, I didn't know that. I had no idea. It's a 1 in a trillion. 1 in a trillion. So most people don't believe it. Okay, what the voice box man in the wheelchair tells us about the eclipse. Therefore, I would say so it's not what they say. It's something completely different going on. Whatever your belief is, magical, mystical, wondrous, part of the simulation. So I would say to these people I fight with, did the secret look up at the eclipse? Just pretend there's one right now in your sky, and you're in the umbra. You're in the umbra. They make soccer balls. Do you believe the secret societies did that? Do you believe the secret societies? Do you believe but look up at the eclipse right now. It's right outside your window. Do you believe Skull and Bones did that? Do you believe the OTO and the Order of the Golden Dawn and the Club of Malta or the Club of Rome or the Club of Pee Wee Herman? Do you believe they did that? No? So you don't believe it's a rock, and you don't believe things are entirely real, like the voice box man in the wheelchair says either. So see how that, if you don't believe it's a rock moving in front of a burning thing, do you see how that breaks down all reality? And it's then you can't assign regular reality understandings in between the bookends perceptions to what is going on down here. If that thing isn't real, we don't know exactly what it is. Matt, don't you know it's black sun? I don't care about all those theories. I'm well aware of all that. This isn't my first rodeo. If you don't believe that is real, like what they say it is, but then down here, everything to the people that think the secret societies is doing everything, it's all real. It's all phone calls. It's all people running around. You can't have it both ways. If it's all, and people get on me about the J, word I can't talk about, a certain country in the middle. Matt, you never call those people out. That is the height of ignorance, the people that get on me about that. Oh my goodness, how stupid. See, Matt, you're protecting those people. Oh my God. What I believe is going on down here is so far removed from a group of people or a secret society. You've got to be kidding me. You see, you're protecting them again, Matt, and you're protecting the Jays and the secret societies. Okay, you got me. So you can't have it both ways. If you look up at the eclipse and you don't think that's real, then everything going on down here ain't real either, to a certain degree. You see how they're kind of at odds with each other, or am I just completely losing it? See, people, I told you, he's pushing the as above, so below. Matt's pushing he's talking about the eclipse isn't very real up there, so what's happening down here isn't very real as above. He's probably, you can't see him recording this, he's probably all dressed up like Baphomet in his chair with a goat head on at the microphone. He'll never show you that side of him, will he? Okay, it is like as above, so below. Again, that principle's not just reserved for the Baphomet, whatever that weird-ass painting is, whatever they believe that thing to be, Kabbalion principles and things like, it's these principles of the universe, all is mind, it's the all-seeing eye, the gematria, the numbers, that's there for all of us. Like I've said a million times, oh, the creeps present that symbol, so I better run from it. That's what they want you to do. They even hijack the swastika, of course. It goes back thousands of years. It's a beautiful thing. It goes back, they hijack it so people run from it. They do it with the 33. They do it with the eye. They do it with everything. So, okay. So I'm never supposed to talk about the as above, so below because of Baphomet presented it, and that's to a big segment of the truth community. That's evil. Okay, you understand basically where I'm going here. So let me get this straight. There's of all signs, all wonders here, all incredible symbols that come from the natural world, there's one ring that rules them all. There's one that reigns supreme, that's 100 million times greater than anything else this reality system can produce. It's the eclipse. So much so, the normies go run out with their campers and their folding chairs, and they get in the umbra, and they wait for it to come, and the normies, when it comes, they pour with tears and oh my God, the emotion flows over them, and they don't even realize what's happening to them. Or maybe these aren't normies. Maybe these are real people that are just completely fooled and brainwashed into the American psycho society. But they pour with emotion, and then 10 minutes later they forget. Yeah, were you guys hungry? You think we traveled out here to get in the Umbra with our folding chairs. Is there a Domino's around here? And then they order a Domino's instead of having a conversation with themselves, as people like you and people like me would. And we would say they should say, I was crying too. The normie people, or the people that haven't found themselves, or the real spirits that are completely lost in the American psycho reality. They should say, why did all that emotion come over us? Let's really explore that before we lose the feeling, before we ingest the Domino's pizza. And that puts its nanoprobes in us, so we forget the entire experience. I don't really believe that, but I don't believe it's good for you either. So they don't do that. They don't do that. It's probably like it never happened. the emotion. The emotion flowing out should tell everybody about themselves. It should tell people about reality itself. They should say, we need to talk about this. I mean, go watch from the 2017 eclipse, go watch the videos, and you've seen it, of people, experiencing the umbra with their video cameras, and everybody are, oh my God. There's reason that emotion is coming out way beyond the visual of whatever they believe they're seeing. But how many of them really examine it? Almost none of them. The reason, to me, the emotion flows out is because 90% of all of us is parts of us, like the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind, that we can't really communicate with directly. Only 10% of us, do I know the percentages exactly? No, but a small percentage of us is the ego mind, the frontal lobes of the brain, the part that thinks in English. This is the part that has been trained to dominate in this earth reality. This is the part that most people think is the only thing that exists. Those other parts are far more powerful, far more closer to your spiritual self. So these emotions come out. For example, the ego mind and the thinking part of the mind in English can't control if you run up to the end of your driveway to get the mail waiting for your publisher's clearinghouse to come in. It can't control that the sweat might come out, and then the heartbeats and the regulation of the electrolytes, and all that's happening, millions and millions of calculations and blood chemistry, all happening behind the scenes. And that's just one aspect of how much greater the unconscious and subconscious parts of us are, which the normie never even thinks about for 2 seconds. That's where the emotion's coming from. Because that's like, to me, the subconscious, unconscious, the eclipse is like a reminder. Is it Matt? It's a portal. It could be, who knows? But it's the closest thing the subconscious, unconscious, or certain parts of us will get as, just say, a reminder, for lack of any better word, a reminder of where we came from, or who we truly are, or how fake the system is. And the emotion pours forth, and the dumbass frontal lobes, thinking in English, ego mind, the one that wants the Domino's, let's get the Domino's pizza, are you hungry? That they don't even realize where that emotion came from. Shame on these people, or whatever they are. Shame on them. They don't stop to, that's where it's coming from, parts of us that, the part of the brain that we run around the mall using, the ship captain doesn't believe there's any other, put something in the book like this, doesn't even think there's any other parts of the ship or any other crew members, or the pilot sitting at the controls of the plane is the ego mind and the frontal lobes and the thinking part of the brain flying the plane. And that's all there is. The whole world revolves around the ego mind. We in these communities understand these other parts of us exist. So before I forget the example I tried to introduce with the captain of the airplane or the jet, that's the ego mind flying the plane. Could radio up to him, Captain, there are other crew members, and there's mechanics that work on the plane, and all sorts of people in the back, and flight attendants, and no, the ego mind is the captain. It's just me up here. Nobody else needs to. It's like Captain Picard in that Beverly Crusher episode of The Next Generation. Nobody else needs to operate this ship. The crew complement has always just been me and you. He just thinks it's ego mind. That's all there is in most people. There ain't no flight attendants back there. There's nothing. It's been bred and brainwashed in this reality system to probably be more and more dominant and to this degree, evolution or Darwin's principles is real in this one little degree. Everywhere else, it's a fraud. That they have trained what they call the human being to forget the other aspects of itself, forget the spiritual aspects, that's an Obama, to cut all those off, to not have any idea of the power of the subconscious or unconscious. All that matters in this 2022 American psycho reality system is the ego mind. You're the pilot of the plane, and you're going to take your selfie as you land, and there ain't nobody else. And it's been incredibly proficient, this system. And per Darwin, that ego mind has evolved to be a little dominant Napoleon. even the system will present this sort of truth via like Sigmund Freud and things like that. But then at the last moment, they'll hijack it. They'll tell you about the id ego and superego and parts of you that are latent. But then they'll, like Sigmund Freud, lots of truth, but then probably completely hijacked, completely a deception, probably. And I haven't dived into Sigmund Freud, but, to me, a complete system player, I think there's much more truth that came out of Carl Jung. But I ain't expert in either of them. It's just what the system does. It hijacks and runs it off the real truth. It won't, when it's getting close, it'll run the real truth off the road. Like Denzel Washington in Man on Fire taped his hands to the steering wheel and he says, "Off to the next life for you," ran the car off the cliff. That's what this reality does to truth. Remember that scene in Man on Fire? He's like, "Do you know who I am? La Hermandad?" "Yeah, bandejo." Guardianes. Sorry. They run it off the cliff. That's what Sigmund Freud, they got to put a little truth out. Hey, there's other parts of you that exist, ego, superego, but run it off the cliff and make it so goddamn boring in a college classroom you never truly want to examine it for yourself. So back to my main point and my ongoing battle with the people that think the secret societies and the deep state pulls everything off. So we just go back to basics. I'd say to these people, the eclipse, you think that's a rock that's perfectly round, moving in front of a burning thing in a 1 in a trillion coincidence? Most would say, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe what that plastic man, ABC Mirror Man tells me on the ABC World News. I don't believe it. Okay, so we don't know exactly what it is, but it's not what they say it is. That means it's highly, incredibly wondrous, mystical. Anything that you can possibly imagine should be left on the table other than a rock flying in front of a burning thing. And the people that believe the secret societies are doing everything say, yeah, we generally agree, man. It's incredibly wondrous, mystical, reveals mysteries to the universe. So, okay, that ain't very real, but everything down here has to be very real. Why doesn't the as above, so below? Why can't, if that ain't very real, then I would say, or I think the wise man or woman would say, or the wise P or Z would say, then that ain't very real, then this ain't very real. And it's not like that's the only example we have. That's a 1 in a trillion or 1 in billions. We have the Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities. Always go back to that because I put that in terms of coincidence, probability. Flip a coin. 50-50. Do it twice. It's 25%. It keeps going down and down until it gets into the ridiculously remote. The Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities, of which we have 50 ridiculous coincidences. Both vice presidents were Johnson. It just goes on and on and on. There's only 2 presidents that have performing centers for the arts, the Lincoln Center and the Kennedy Center. It goes on and, well, Matt, that would be a manipulation of the deep state. I hear you. But the Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities go back so far and are so intricate, and it's not just, well, Matt, you can manipulate the internet any way you want. It's not just research that can only be done on the internet or would be confined to the internet. You could go out to an old library in a rare books room and pull a book and say, yeah, the guy that was on the security detail for Lincoln, his name was Kennedy. You could find that in a 120-year-old book. So unless you think maybe the deep state set out their Oompa Loompas, the deep state at night, the little blue people, they rummage the whole world at night and they change pages in the library and they can just change everything and all the Oompa Loompas go out. There's billions of them and they insert new pages into books with nobody looking. It's just the Lincoln to Kennedy synchronicities. I forget what I put it at or if I mentioned in the book, but it's easily 1 in a billion. Now, again, my favorite example of all time, we've been part of us, the rational part of us has been bred to put our guard up when, something just, 1 out of 100 coincidence. We would say, oh, that can't really happen. That's 1 out of 100. But then the same people or the normie down the cul-de-sac will accept the 1 in a trillion, the eclipse, or the 1 in the billion, the Lincoln to Kennedy synchronicities. And my favorite example was, you get off the train in Brooklyn or the subway or the PATH train in New York and somebody's doing the free card Monty and the shell game and another guy down there is saying, I bet you I can flip this quarter and get heads 10 times in a row. How much you want to bet me? There's not one person that would put money down. Say, you can't flip that quarter 10 times in a row, because they would know it's a scam, of course. And then the way that you could just walk up to the guy, look at you. Look at you. Hair like that, greased back. You're a scam artist, sir. You proud of yourself, sir? You would know it's a scam. You would walk on. But the chances of that guy flipping 10 heads in a row, that's magnitudes and magnitudes and magnitudes less than, of course, the eclipse, the Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities, or many of the other things, the thousands of other things we look at in truth, like pulling off the 2001 job application in the way it was, and the fact that there should be thousands upon thousands of still images of something coming in or nothing coming in, thousands and thousands of videos. Matt, if there was no P, then there's nothing to... Well, that's right. Then there would be thousands and thousands of videos of nothing. Of just all this stuff. The chances you get into 1 in a million time after time. So it breaks down. The eclipse is just a reminder of all the other things that you easily get to the probabilities of 1 in a million, 1 in 10 million. And again, we've learned that even the guy pushing the 3-card Monty at the train stop and the 10 flip of the coin, that's a trick. I'm not going to get involved in that. But then on everything else, we believe it. And there's a whole, I guess, I would say, because there's a whole segments of the truth community, guys, we don't even come across that are different levels, and they don't come across channels like this or investigate things like this. I would say 80% of the truth community still believes that it's still first grade stuff, that it's all men and women running around, it's all secret societies, all deep state. And we can, somebody sent me a video this morning. It was the same stuff we looked at 10 years ago. It's all the same stuff. Don't you know they're pushing the one world religion? And look, there's some merit to all that stuff we looked at 10 years ago, but you can't you step back at this point and see that it's all part of the trick? The greatest line of all time, the closer you get to conspiracy, the farther away we get from truth. It's very simple. It's all part of a gigantic reality ruse. And the eclipse is a reminder of that. I'm going to do it. It's really obnoxious to a lot of people, like the guy looking at his teeth in the hubcap in Shallow Hal. He's got spina bifida, man. Give him a break. He's just playing the cards he was dealt. Is this outfit to look at me? That's what the eclipse is. The eclipse says, look up here. The eclipse is just a reminder. Pick a guy out in the field. You've heard me do this before. It was one of my favorite examples of all time, and it's one of the most important examples of all time. A guy out in the field in 1700. Pick any date, the Dark Ages, 1000 BC, whatever. And he just, my life sucks. I'm on the sharecropping, and basically it's slave wages. We're allowed to, for everything I produce, I'm allowed to keep 1 head of lettuce. I can't get my wife pregnant. My cows just died. This life sucks, man. And then out of the blue, they didn't have no weather reports. They didn't have no guys predicting shit coming with voice boxes and wheelchairs. It just out of the blue, the eclipse happens right over his head while he's out in the field. And then everything, if he was smart, Joel, if you're smart, like I know you are, look like a smart kid, Joel, look like a smart farmer out in the field, he would stop and say, most didn't, probably they returned to their Domino's pizza and they just went back. But a few smart ones said, honey, come on, come out here. Honey, back then the relationships were the traditional kind. Do you perform the traditional obligations? And say, come out here. This menial existence that was just proven false. This thing just happened in the sky. And of course they would assume it's a sign from God or whatever, but it would put their whole life into perspective. It would say there's this menial existence. This is just one little tiny aspect of a greater whole. What happened in the sky? Did you see it? And I was sleeping. Oh, you should have seen it. It puts this whole menial existence into perspective, where I no longer mind going out here shelling these clams. It's the eclipse it's the one ring to rule them all in terms of signs and wonders, in terms of remind people what's important. So maybe the guy didn't really mind going back in shelling his clams the next day in the same way, because he just, for just that moment, he was part of the universe himself, or he could look down on how menial this one little train stop is from millions of miles away from a snow globe perspective. And the eclipse, but then the next day happens and people forget and they go back and they forget whatever lessons they learned or whatever part of the subconscious or unconscious in them tried to get out. And that's what people, if the guy in 1700 did it in the field, that's what the people do here. And that's what the truthers do. They'll go right back. They'll see the eclipse and go, oh my God, and all the emotions will come out. And then they'll go right back the next day saying the damn secret societies, the deep state, and Tavistock was pulling off every of the millions and millions of conspiracies that have been pulled off to perfection, that thousands of things here and the schools here, and they're going back through Titanic and all this stuff and hidden knowledge and the Vatican lie. Every single one was pulled off successfully by men and women in smoking rooms who were just waiting for the Subway sandwiches to be delivered. And where's Jack down the end? Oh, that Subway sandwich didn't agree with him. He had to run to the... So a guy that had to run to the pot, he's plotting the whole world. You see the problem here, folks? Matt, you just trying to protect him. You one of them. You Joe Rogan son of a bitch.